Close the door of a 1995 S-Class. Really listen. That dense vault seal thud. That sound was not accidental. Engineers spent weeks getting it right. Not because a spreadsheet told them to, but because they believed every single detail of that car should communicate one thing. You are in the presence of something extraordinary. Now sit inside a 2023 EQE, run your hand along the center console, push the touch screen, take a corner and listen carefully. There it is. That faint, maddening creak. The kind of sound that makes a $100,000 purchase feel like a mistake the moment you drive off the forecourt. That creak is not just a quality control problem, it is a symptom. It is the sound of a company that forgot what business it was actually in. Understanding exactly how that happened is the story we're about to tell. This brand was not built on clever marketing, it was built on obsession. Carl Benz filed the patent for the first true automobile in 1886. Not a prototype, not a concept, a functioning road-legal machine. From that moment, Mercedes-Benz set the pace for everyone else. The crumple zone, the anti-lock braking system, the airbag, all were invented or first mass-produced by Mercedes-Benz. These were not added to tick a safety checklist. They were added because engineers refused to ship something they were not proud of. In the golden decades, the W116 S-Class of the 1970s was so overbuilt that owners passed them down like heirlooms. The W126, launched in 1979, ran for 9 years and set the global standard for what a luxury sedan could be. By the time the W140 arrived in 1991, the car was so obsessively engineered that it was nicknamed the Tank. It cost a fortune to build. Nobody at the board level seemed to care. The car had to be perfect. That culture had a name, the best or nothing. It was the operating philosophy of an entire organisation, baked into hiring decisions, supply chain choices, and engineering sign-offs. It attracted the kind of craftsmen who turned down jobs at other manufacturers because they did not want to compromise. That culture built one of the most valuable brand names in industrial history. Then, quietly, someone in a corner office decided it was time to try something different. The year was 2012, Mercedes launched the A-Class, a front-wheel drive hatchback smaller than a C-Class, with a starting price designed to compete with the Audi A3 and the BMW 1 Series. The logic seemed sound. Pull younger buyers in early, build loyalty, grow the funnel. What actually happened was something the volume charts could not capture. The three-pointed star began appearing in supermarket car parks, on school runs, in rental fleets. People who had once saved 2 years for an entry-level Mercedes now saw the badge in every direction they turned. The brand had confused accessibility with desirability. Those are two very different things, and in luxury, the confusion is fatal. Research by brand consultancies flagged the risk clearly. Luxury brands derive their value not only from what they are, but from what they signal. When the signal becomes noise, the premium evaporates. Mercedes ignored it. By 2019, entry-level models, including the A-Class, B-Class and CLA, accounted for a growing share of global volumes. The boardroom celebrated. The buyers of S-Classes and G-Classes quietly started looking elsewhere. To be fair, competitors were doing the same thing, but Mercedes did it faster, deeper, and with less caution than anyone else. They traded the vault door thud for the spreadsheet win. And once you've invited everyone to the party, it is almost impossible to make the party feel exclusive again. This was not the only mistake. It was just the first domino. If you want to understand how great brands quietly destroy themselves, you're in exactly the right place. Hit subscribe, because what comes next gets a lot worse. Somewhere around 2018, Mercedes made a decision that still echoes through their showrooms today. They decided that the future of luxury was a screen. The MBUX infotainment system arrived with a giant sweeping dashboard display covering everything from navigation to climate control. At first glance, it looked impressive. At second glance, it looked like someone had bolted an iPad to the dashboard and called it innovation. The physical buttons that enthusiasts loved, the tactile, reassuring click of a real knob as you adjusted the temperature, changed the station, turned up the heat, were gone. Replaced by a haptic gesture system that, according to multiple consumer reports, routinely required a driver's eyes to leave the road entirely. But here is what the screen was really doing. Every square inch of real wood veneer that a screen replaced saved Mercedes money. Every leather-wrapped switchgear panel that became a digital menu was a cost cut dressed up as a feature. J.D. Power surveys from this era began flagging software and connectivity as the single biggest source of owner complaints across the brand. Real luxury is tactile. It is the weight of a gear knob, the soft resistance of a well-engineered dial. A screen is just a screen. You can find one in a budget hatchback for a third of the price, and the buyers who had spent their professional lives being told they deserved better to noticed. They did not complain loudly. They simply remembered the feeling when it was time to choose their next car. There is a survey that the automotive industry dreads every year. The J.D. Power Vehicle Dependability Study measures problems per 100 vehicles after 3 years of ownership. In the 2024 edition, the industry average deteriorated to 190 problems per 100 vehicles, the worst reading in years. Mercedes was not near the top of that ranking. Porsche scored 175. Lexus, the benchmark, scored 135. But the numbers barely scratched the surface of what was happening in the real world. By 2022 and 2023, YouTube channels dedicated entirely to documenting Mercedes interior rattles, software freezes, and infotainment crashes were pulling millions of views. These were not obscure technical forums. These were ordinary owners with phones, filming their $100,000 purchase making sounds it should never make. The EQS, their flagship electric vehicle, shipped with a software system that reviewers described as slow, unintuitive, and prone to glitching mid-journey. In Germany, the country where the brand was born, owner satisfaction surveys placed Mercedes behind several mass-market rivals on perceived quality. What made this particularly damaging was the price trajectory running alongside it. Mercedes had been aggressively raising prices across every model line through this same period. You can charge a premium for reliability. You can charge a premium for exclusivity. What you cannot do for very long is charge a premium for neither. The reputation that took 130 years to build was being chipped away in real time, and the brand's biggest single bet was still to come. What they did next made everything worse, and it cost them billions. In 2021, Mercedes launched the EQS. It was meant to be the electric S-Class, the flagship of a new era, the proof that a 135-year-old manufacturer could compete with Tesla and reset the benchmark for electric luxury. What buyers got was a car that looked like a melted bar of soap. The hyper-aerodynamic design, optimized to achieve a drag coefficient of 0.20, the lowest of any production car at the time, stripped away every visual cue that had ever communicated Mercedes to the world. There was no upright, authoritative grille, no classic three-box silhouette. The car looked, to put it plainly, anonymous. In the luxury segment, anonymity is a death sentence. Mercedes even acknowledged this themselves. In 2024, CEO Ola Källenius told the press that the EQS styling was 10 years too early. That is an extraordinary admission. They had built a flagship vehicle and then designed it for a buyer who does not exist yet. The market gave its verdict without hesitation. In the United States, EQS sales collapsed 52% in 2024, falling from 14,499 units to just 6,963. The EQE lineup dropped 39%. The EQB fell 36%. Globally, battery electric vehicle sales fell 22% across the full year. Dealership forecourts in Germany and the US were filled with unsold EQ inventory, while AMG and ICE models sold without hesitation. The car that was supposed to announce Mercedes' electric future instead became the most expensive evidence of a brand that had stopped listening to the people it was supposed to serve. Here is the trap Mercedes has walked into, and it is closing from both sides. At the top end, Porsche has been eating their lunch. While Mercedes was chasing volume and confusing buyers with aerodynamic blobs, Porsche kept its portfolio tight, its prices high, and its product quality consistent. The Taycan became the benchmark for electric performance and prestige. The Cayenne SUV consistently outperforms comparable Mercedes products in resale values, reliability surveys, and owner satisfaction scores. In the 2024 JD Power Dependability Study, Porsche scored 175 problems per 100 vehicles, placing it second among all premium brands. Wealthy buyers who once graduated naturally from an E-Class to an S-Class are now walking into Porsche showrooms and not coming back. At the other end, the threat is more existential. China was Mercedes' single largest market. In 2024, China's sales fell 7% as domestic manufacturers, including BYD, offered technology-packed models at prices Mercedes could not match without destroying its own margin. By the third quarter of 2025, the erosion had accelerated sharply, with China sales falling a further 27% year-on-year, the steepest decline across any region. Chinese consumers who once paid a premium for the three-pointed star were choosing domestic alternatives with longer software update cycles and significantly lower price tags. Mercedes is caught between a brand that does luxury better and a market that does technology cheaper. That is not a competitive problem. That is an identity crisis. And identity crises in the car industry tend to end in one of two ways: a painful reinvention or a slow, quiet fade into irrelevance. The people selling Mercedes cars on the ground had already reached their breaking point. To understand what is happening inside a Mercedes dealership right now, you need to understand one thing. The people who run these businesses are not employees of Mercedes-Benz. They are independent operators who invested significant personal capital in the franchise. They buy the cars from the factory, put them on their forecourt and sell them to customers. If the cars do not sell, the dealer carries that cost. By 2023 and 2024, EQ inventory was piling up. Dealers across Germany, the UK and the United States were offering discounts of between 20 and 30% on EQ models simply to move stock. The EQB, the entry-level electric, was being advertised below list price in multiple markets. At the same time, customers were walking in and asking directly for V8 engines, AMG performance models, and the G-Class. The G-Class had its best year ever in 2024, with American customers purchasing over 10,987 units. Mercedes-AMG posted a record fourth quarter. The demand for combustion was loud, clear, and had been pointedly ignored at the product planning level for years. What crystallized the frustration was the price tension. Dealers were discounting EVs with one hand while corporate was raising list prices on combustion models with the other. The brand was simultaneously trying to appear as a luxury company going upmarket and behave as a volume company trying to shift units. Those two things cannot coexist in the same showroom without destroying the trust of every person who walks through the door. The dealer network is the face of any car brand, and that face in too many cities had begun to look exhausted. The numbers tell the real story. In 2024, Mercedes' net profit fell 28% to 10.4 billion euros. Revenue dropped 4% to 145.6 billion euros. In the third quarter alone, earnings before interest and taxes fell 48% year-on-year. Top-end vehicles, the S-Class and Maybach combined, the very segment the entire strategy had been staked on, declined 14% globally. The CEO then announced plans to slash production costs by 10% by 2027. That is not a growth plan, that is a damage control plan. Then 2025 arrived and made 2024 look like a warm-up. Full-year operating earnings collapsed 57% to 5.8 billion euros. Revenue fell a further 9% to 132.2 billion euros. The company announced cuts of up to 30,000 jobs. Guided car division margins for 2026 were set at just 3 to 5%. Porsche, operating in identical market conditions, runs margins above 15%. The irony at the centre of all of this is almost uncomfortable. Mercedes spent a decade raising prices across every model line while simultaneously reducing the tangible quality that once justified those prices. They charged more for less. Wealthy people, it turns out, are not easily fooled. They have options, and they exercise them. The question now is whether the current leadership has the appetite, the courage, and frankly the time to course correct. Because the damage is real, the competition is not slowing down, and the window for reinvention is narrower than any press release will admit. What happens next might surprise you, but it will require the kind of honesty that is genuinely rare in corporate boardrooms. The good news is that Mercedes-Benz is not finished. The blueprint for survival is visible in their own data. In 2024, when everything EQ branded sat unsold, Mercedes-AMG posted a record fourth quarter. The G-Class exceeded 10,000 US sales for the first time in its history. The products that remained rooted in authentic performance and visual identity sold themselves without discounts, without apology, and without hesitation. The lesson is not complicated. When Mercedes is Mercedes, people still buy it. The path forward demands real honesty. The entry-level strategy must be wound down further. 3 entry models have already been axed, with the company acknowledging that cheaper vehicles had tarnished luxury perceptions. More must follow. You cannot claim to be a luxury brand while filling rental fleets. The EV design language must be rebuilt around the visual authority the brand actually earned. The upcoming electric CLA and the electric S-Class replacement have both been redesigned to look like real Mercedes cars. That is the correct direction. It is just years behind where it should have been. Most critically, the engineering culture must be restored above the accounting culture. Screens are not a luxury. Software updates are not craftsmanship. Buyers at this price point can feel the difference between a cost-cutting dressed as innovation and the real thing. They always could. Every company that has ever lost its way lost it the same way, quietly. One small compromise at a time, each one easy to justify in isolation, until the original thing that made them great had been entirely engineered out of existence. The best or nothing was never just a slogan. It was the whole strategy. It just got forgotten. And now, under enormous financial pressure, and with the competition closing in from every direction, the question is brutally simple. Does anyone in Stuttgart still remember what it actually means? If this video made you think differently about how legacy brands die, not with a bang but with 1,000 quiet compromises, then you already think like the people we make content for. Subscribe to the channel, because the next video goes even deeper into the brands that are winning and losing the global prestige war right now. And if you know someone who still thinks buying a badge is the same as buying quality, send them this. It might be the most useful thing they watch this year.